Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Talking Point on wesn's Content Capital. Sean Michael Small here, soon to be joined, hopefully, by my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shaw. Until then, the discussions must go on, although it's somewhat ironic that I'm using the word discussions, as essentially it appears that I will be talking to myself. However, I will be speaking to you, the viewer, and come after the 9 o'clock news on the hour break, we will, of course, open up the phone lines to allow you to talk back to me. Until then, however, it's going to be a little bit one-sided, but that is the nature of television. First of all, it's a beautiful day this morning. Somewhat surprised at the level of traffic coming out from my area. I don't know what it's like on your end. However, while the sun is out shining and the skies are beautiful and all of the flowers and everything is looking so lovely at this time of year and what have you, and we don't have any rain clouds in the sky, well, there are still dark proverbial clouds over TNT right now. Some of them on the horizon, more to come. Right now, a mother and her two sons were arrested for one of the latest gruesome murders of the young teenage boy. It's an interesting twist, to say the least. It potentially puts more or less all of our commentary on the matter based on the initial reports. We have to now shift gears. Those seem to be not as accurate as we at first thought, and we have to acknowledge the fact that the situation, in some instances, we're not necessarily looking at young teenage boys killing each other. On the other hand, we're looking at a family potentially involved in crime. I'm not entirely sure if that's better or worse. And we also have some interesting developments. The president of Twitter has been replaced on a very close vote. I myself find that, according to reports, so let me be clear, I don't necessarily know if this is how the new president of Twitter actually feels, but according to reports, one of the first things at the top of his priority list is wages for teachers, which just goes back to what I've been saying, where their number one priority is their money. And given the fact that they are private school teachers who earn less than members of Twitter, I am left wondering exactly, really and truly, should this even be a priority for the society? Or is this merely just one union among a host of unions that, well, they're doing their job, they're negotiating for more money at a time when there isn't more money? That's wonderful. It's almost as though, I do have to ask, it's almost as though the moment that Twitter acknowledged that there was other things besides money, was that what caused the outgoing president to lose just enough votes? We're talking 50 votes. The margin of error, the margin of defeat was 50. They both got 3,500. One got 3,585, one got 3,535. Was that the difference with regards to what the public sector teachers, does that reveal what the slim majority cares about? And it's a beautiful sunny day, but is it still a beautiful day that we could look forward to for our country? Right now, given the economic situation and the cost of living, the fact that oil prices being this high, it might actually remain so, which means that cost of goods being shipped to TNT might remain high because of that, which means that the shipping crisis, if that isn't resolved, cost of goods will also remain high from that stumbling block as well. What do we have? What do we have to guard against these things, to guard against these external shocks? It's something I asked at last year's budget. I reiterated it, maybe less emphatically, after this last budget presentation. But are we really prepared? And it goes to a thought that I had with regards to our political parties. In a sense, we don't necessarily know what their ideologies are, technically because they have none. But I'll get to that later on in the show. I did stumble across a video that I think helps explain some of our specific challenges to our economy in these current times. Because while we could have complaints to the current government, we might disagree with how they're managing things, right? We might strongly disagree with how they're managing things. That doesn't necessarily mean that the challenges don't exist. We have to acknowledge our circumstances and our situation in order to properly assess how do we move forward from here. I feel as though we are in a bit of a bind because we are caught, unfortunately, unprepared. So I have some videos here from some brilliant people from an organization called Economics Explained. Let's take a look at the first one. Maybe then you will better understand exactly where I'm coming from. It's mainly to do with what oil and gas has meant for us, both good and the bad. Let's see the first clip.
In 1959, the Netherlands discovered 2.7 trillion cubic metres of extractable natural gas in a field taking up most of the north of the small country. This immediately made the nation a lot of money as fossil fuel companies moved in to start extracting profits from the fields. The natural gas industry boomed and the value of the Dutch guilder rose substantially in international exchange markets as other countries exchanged their money for guilders, which they could then use to buy this natural gas. This caused a problem for the Netherlands' other industries because now any goods that they want to...
All right, we seem to have some audio problems there with the video, so we'll try to rectify that. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll see if we could get it fixed for you, the viewer, because the implications of our situation, diversification, we understand it. Those things get being thrown out there a lot. The oil and gas sector, how long will it last? I have to admit, while I do want to see TNT diversified and I want to see food security, I also do wonder if the government is at least slightly justified with their hesitation, because it's not going to be easy. Does that mean that we don't do it? No. It might actually mean the opposite. We should do it now. However, I don't think it's going to be easy. And I'm not too sure if it's going to be the cure to our ills that a lot of people might be taking for granted that they think it will be. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll see if I could get that video playing better for you. We'll be right back here on Talking Points on WESN, your content capital.
Diwali is in the air again, and Royal Castle reminds you to try its yummy veggie burger. The Royal Castle veggie burger is great on its own or in a combo with a side and a 16-ounce drink. And it's healthy too. A nutritious patty made with oats, lentils, chana, potatoes, and carrot inside a soft bun with tomatoes and lettuce. So for this season, try the Castle's tasty and healthy veggie burger. Shubh Diwali from Royal Castle.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
It's It's Diwali time again, and that means delicious vegetarian cuisine. Chief has all your herbs and spices for Diwali. Curry, jeera, saffron, garam masala and more for all your tal curry. Cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, ginger and cardamom for those delectable sweets. Brown rice, dal and chana for those tasty delicacies. And of course, Chief baking powder for soft and light roti. This Diwali, remember, the chief reason is always taste.
Perfection doesn't happen by chance. Like an artist, the cook selects the main ingredient, one that is worthy of a proud cultural tradition. Trusted to enhance your creations with its richness and versatility. To create a cooking masterpiece, the secret is simple. The brand we know, the brand we trust, the brand our ancestors have been using for generations.
There is only one pure cow brand ghee. Look for the marks of authenticity.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Set to two very lovely dispensing opticians from optometrists today. We have Yusra and we have Kyla.
For blue light, an interesting fact is 15 minutes exposed to the sunlight equals 12 hours on our screens.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Trillion cubic meters of extractable natural gas in a field taking up most of the north of the small country. This immediately made the nation a lot of money as fossil fuel companies moved in to start extracting profits from the fields. The natural gas industry boomed and the value of the Dutch guilder rose substantially in international exchange markets as other countries exchanged their money for guilders which they could then use to buy this natural gas. This caused a problem for the Netherlands' other industries because now any goods that they wanted to export would be more expensive for the countries they were selling it to because those goods would need to be paid for in the more valuable Dutch currency. Domestic industries also struggled to sell their goods locally because the Dutch people could use their more valuable currency to import goods from countries with a less valuable currency. This meant that the gas industry really became the only viable industry in the country, which was inherently unstable for a lot of reasons. Not least of which is the fact that you don't really need that many people to extract natural gas. So, mass unemployment becomes a very real issue. This is what is called Dutch disease, and I'm sure most of you have probably heard about it before. We have mentioned it several times before on this channel when looking at resource-rich countries that have squandered their wealth. Currency value goes up, industry competitiveness goes down, and the country becomes dependent on exporting raw materials, which has historically been an industry prone to corruption and mismanagement. That's where most economists, including ourselves in the past, have left it. But there's a little bit more to understand about Dutch disease which can directly help us to explain these fancy projects in the desert. The explanation of currency appreciation is very neat, and in the short to medium term as accurate as most people need it to be. But if you think about this for too long, you might start to see some problems. The value of a currency is kind of like the value of a stock, completely meaningless unless you consider the context of those values. Microsoft shares trade at around $240 and Google shares trade for $100 at the time of making this video, but that does not mean that Microsoft is 2.4 times more valuable or profitable or anything relative to Google. $1 buys 144 Japanese yen, but just because the Japanese currency is worth less does not mean that the country has more competitive exports. Likewise, up until recently, the British pound was worth more than the American dollar, but English workers weren't inherently more expensive to employ. Eventually, these things will equalise. Dutch citizens enjoyed the value of their oil-backed guilders for a short while, but the slowdown of industry meant that unemployment rose and their salaries fell until they were back in line with international competitiveness.
And we're back, and while we might not have necessarily traded in a very strong TT dollar, the TT dollar relative to a lot of other currencies in the world was and still is to some extent very strong, and that has implications with our import and exports. That's part of the explanation why we are where we are today. One of the other things that that video was explaining that happened in the Netherlands was the fact that employment became a problem as the oil and gas revenue earned far more out of proportion to the amount of citizens that it wasn't needed to be employed. And the fact that raw material extraction tends to have a lot more corruption. Things that I do believe, you the viewer, these things should not necessarily be new to you, particularly the last one. Anyway, to help me further have the conversations of our ongoing struggles, and I promise we will get further into why diversification is not going to be so simple, but the implications of why we start being less diverse is already there in the first video. But again, to help me here, we have, as promised, my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah. Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning to all our viewers. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be back actually in this position, in this seat. Not a fan of doing it via Zoom, but sometimes that's what it calls for. Very interesting video actually, and I like how it segued into the explanation about the power of one's currency. Mm-hmm. The value of one's currency does not necessarily relate to the power of the market. As pointed out, for example, yes, Trinidad and Tobago's dollar may be strong when compared to other currencies throughout the globe. It's just similar to what they were stating about the US dollar and the Japanese yen.
Yeah, our economy is not like Japanese economy. Exactly.
Even if our dollar is stronger than the Japanese yen, for example, the TT dollar is stronger than the Japanese yen, you know, what are our exports? What are our main exports here in Trinidad and Tobago? Our main exports fall under energy and energy byproducts, of course. Ethanol, methanol, oil, natural gas. And to a certain extent, we've become importers now of oil. So, Dutch disease it's a very interesting explanation, and I do remember studying that for international political economy back when I was in university. But you see, the issue with Trinidad and Tobago is, you remember what it pointed out there, that you do not need a great amount of employment in order to extract oil.
Yep.
The issue with Trinidad and Tobago is that once we relied on our oil and gas economy, we literally found jobs for people. We jobs that were not necessary. And I think that is what put a big strain on our market. That is part of the reason. It's not the entire reason, but that's part of the reason that led to severe strain on our oil market here in Trinidad and Tobago. The mere fact that the whole controversy with Petron, there are multiple factors that lead to Petron, but that is one of them.
I would go a step further, because you could say that we found jobs in the energy sector, but also we found jobs in the public sector, because there's a lot more. There's another follow-up video that goes into a further explanation with regards to factors of production, including labor, right? But the long and short of that is, with regards to labor, what have we seen? We have not necessarily seen our job market grow properly, right? There's too many instances that we know of where the public sector is said to be bloated. And the government/public sector is more or less considered to be the largest employer on both islands, right? In the case of Tobago, it might be even more out of proportion as opposed to Trinidad, but it's still to an extent true in Trinidad. And that's not necessarily sustainable. That's not necessarily natural. That's not a good balance point for the economy, because I also, doing some other economic research with regards to the price of oil, And again, it wasn't not too long ago that the price of oil, some oil stocks went way into the negatives. I think you at one point you said, you remember, minus $19 a barrel. I think West Texas, their low that day, that extraordinary day, was as low as negative $34 a barrel for their energy stock. But ever since then, oil and gas rebounded, and we're in a spot now where the nature of the energy sector is changing. Scarcity is becoming a bit of a model. It might be good for us in the short term, but the long-term implications is that the world is, for better or worse, going to be moving on to green energy. And the question is, what's going to happen when either that happens and our product no longer matters, or we just run out?
Well, Dutch is essentially, more or less, to put it down into one small analysis. It's simple. Small analysis, ironic too. Essentially, it's the rapid development of one sector, right? When you disregard other sectors. And there are numerous reasons. It's mostly because of natural resources, although it can be other factors.
It doesn't have to be oil.
It doesn't have to be oil. It could be any natural resource, right? But it's just the rapid development. It could be the price of that resource that allows for the rapid development. What we're seeing now, actually, is the result of Dutch disease. We've seen a rapid decline in the oil and gas markets, right? Over the years, people have been predicting, and we have been seeing that trend of energy, non-renewable energy, declining, right? But it's remained steady because the world is trying to transition, but at a snail's pace, put it that way.
And the pandemic, I think, and this war slowed it down considerably.
Now, the result of that is that could Trinidad now, if we're seeing that we cannot diversify outside of oil and gas, all right? Because you're right, we've bloated unemployment in the public sector deliberately, in my opinion, right?
Yes.
Government's job is to create employment and ensure that there is fluidity within the economy. We don't have that, all right?
Well, we have that in the worst possible way.
But what has now transpired is that if it is that we cannot diversify outside of the energy industry, could Trinidad and Tobago diversify within the energy industry in itself? If we're now focusing on green, could Trinidad and Tobago focus on green energy and become a hub for green energy and green energy development? I would hate to think that the reason people give for that is no, Trinidad and Tobago is simply too small and we don't have the resources. I think we have the resources. I think that we have the skills that are necessary. I also think we have the experience, but I always point out the factors whether or not there is the will to do so.
So there's a wider implication that that's implied. I think we might have the technical skills on the science and industry side, maybe. I don't know about the leadership and political skills to actually get the country to shift gears to do that, because that's not necessarily an easy thing. And I don't know if there's a true case study of where we see a modern country. Yeah, there are case studies of where, feudal and then industrial age, or, those various stages of a country progressing to the modern age. I'm not too sure if there's an example now of a modern age where we see a whole country's economy shift that drastically away from the main revenue earner that drives the economy to something else. Because all of the oil and gas countries have been putting forward their own theories, their own plans, their own hopes and dreams with regards to what happens after. No one has actually really had a good answer to that question that they could say, look, and we have the data to prove that it works. No one has it. Ironically speaking, right now, you could argue with wealthy countries, there are basically two types of economies. One that has raw material, natural resource extraction and selling, of which Russia is one. And a lot of Europe and North America, those countries, they depend more on goods and services, finished products, technology, consultation, business administration, banking, financial services, all of those things, right? Entertainment, luxury items, right? Yes, they have raw material extraction as well, but you could argue that it's not the cornerstone of the economy. It's not the only thing that drives. At the end of the day, the price of oil will affect every economy, because that affects costs, but we're talking about revenue earning, we're talking about job creation. I'm pretty sure in America, oil and gas is not necessarily the main employer or the main industry that employs the most people, not even close. Whereas a country like Azerbaijan, I butchered the name, I apologize. Apparently they had so much oil that actually makes a lot of other examples pale in comparison on just the scope of what oil meant or possibly could have meant to them.
I also think here in TNC, because if we're looking at the non-energy industry, or need I say renewable energy industry, forgive me for that mix-up there. There is a great cost, which I don't think people understand as yet, to having that level of green energy, right? Because trying to, for example, let's say that the world is now shifting to electric motor vehicles, right? Which is the big thing now. We're looking at EV vehicles. To now extract the resources in order to actually build the electric system or even the battery for this electric vehicle, it takes a lot more than people, a lot of mining, a lot of mining, a lot of extraction. So there is a cost to that as well. In fact, I would argue that we have not even looked at the electric car industry. I'm talking about globally, I'm not talking about Trans-Tobago. We actually have not examined it or analyzed it to the full extent, more than the fact that, okay, we're actually moving away from oil and gas, this is going to reduce carbon emissions, etc., etc.
I think there's a further implication. Do we even have enough raw materials?
No, we don't.
To just literally build the infrastructure, the devices?
We do not.
Because at least with regards to digital technology, with the chip shortage that's been going on for the last couple of years, the fact that rare earth metals is such a very difficult industry to make sustainable. There's literally one mine in the world operating at a time.
There's actually a metals market that you can go and trade in based in the United Kingdom, right? It's a global thing. The price of some of these metals have skyrocketed within the last few months. You mentioned
we're not talking about iron and steel.
You mentioned the chip shortage as well. Right, the chip shortage is a serious thing to the extent that now you actually, if you go and speak to car dealers in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm speaking about authorized car dealers. I'm not talking about import car dealers, right? I'm speaking about, for example, Honda, Lifestyle Motors, etc., etc. Right? They are now actually stating that they are finding it difficult to bring in vehicles because of that chip shortage. So globally, you're experiencing that. What does this mean going down the line? It means, does this affect now the development of technologies? Does this now...
And the availability.
Well, the availabilities, we're already experiencing that. Because you could progress as much as you want with developing other sectors and other factors and other parts. It's like Dutch disease. If you focus on all of that and you're leaving one part behind, what is going to happen? What are we going to see witnessing? The other part that I wanted to speak of Dutch disease, which we spoke of bloated employment, right? Your solution to creating employment in Trinidad and Tobago, it cannot be taking a company that already exists. A company that was probably already plagued by over-bloated staff. Then splitting the company, and I'm using the example of the HEC now, by the way, because we're splitting HEC into 3 companies. The government has already indicated that there's not going to be any workers being retrenched. Okay, you split the company into 3 parts. What does that mean? It means that you're creating more employment. It means that you're going to bring on more staff. And quite frankly, you cannot solve these issues by just taking shortcuts. You cannot solve the issue of unemployment by creating some new authority, some new board, some new entity, some new company that is funded and run by the state, and then bringing in people to just fill this staff. When at the end of the day, what does that mean? We've seen what has happened with EFCL. We now see what is actually happening with MTS as a result of EFCL. This company that Clarence Ramrat is about to head, I don't understand what is even the point or the purpose of that. We have a Trinidad Highway company. What's the point? So the solution to the unemployment situation, it simply can't just be creating companies for creating employment's sake. Because if these companies are not generating revenues to the extent that the company is profitable, then simply enough, you can't afford employment. And that is precisely why some people have made the argument that the public sector should be run as a private sector, as a business.
Well,
because of the profit motive.
So ideally, what you want is not the profit motive per se, although in some instances, operating certain private sector things to make a profit might actually make sense, because then that revenue could go back into the government's purse to then spend on other things. Ideally, things like the air bridge and the sea bridge would be able to operate at a profit. Things like the port, especially the port of Port of Spain and all of our other ports, not just the energy sector itself, even utilities potentially. The problem with things like the air and sea bridge and utilities and even the ports of entry that deal with our imports is that their costs that they pass on to consumers will affect cost of living, right? In major ways. At the end of the day, for Tobagonians, at the very least, you can't avoid the air and sea bridge, unfortunately. So it's not a luxury to go to Tobago. We do have people in Tobago that need to be able to come to Trinidad. The flip side, of course, is utilities. Obviously, if it goes up, that's cost of living, right? So the problem, of course, is the social factor of wanting to keep cost of living manageable pushes these things down. That's why they more often than not operate at a loss. The flip side is things like the Ministry of Education, things like the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There's no profit incentive there, but you want it to be as efficient as possible, like a private sector entity, run like that, in order to give us the most output or the most production, I guess you could say, for the resources that we put in. Because I'll say this, there's a further theory with regards to the cause of Dutch disease. And one of the things that it touches on is education. And I do feel as though we really miss the boat. I understand, we have callers, they say, look back to Eric Williams when he says that the future is in our book bags. I do think, though, that theory with regards to what we try to do with dollar for dollar and then its successor gate, I think we try to do too much too soon, especially when our secondary school situation and even primary school situation never really, I think, stabilized.
Let me ask you a question. Since we're having this debate, we don't have much time, but is there any one entity that we can point out to in Trinidad and Tobago which was essentially conceptualized by the government, was birthed by the government, operated by the government, and has actually remained successful? Is there any institution that you can think of?
Not that I know.
Right?
Literally.
Exactly.
There's nothing.
That is precisely the point. Companies have been birthed and companies have died at the hands of the government running it. And we are going to see more of that happening. The mere fact that we've allowed this sustained decline, understand what I mean by that, right? Because it's two words that don't make sense when put together. But the term I'm trying to put is that essentially we're aware of the situation, we know what the problems are, we've seen the effects of it, and nothing is ever done about it. I'm still trying to find out, Sean, what is the status of WAS's restructuring, and where are we at this point with respect to that company? Also the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, where are we with that?
I think just before we go to break, I think there's two things, right? First of all, there's more to say with regards to diversification and difficulties of it. To be fair to government, despite the fact that I still think that we need to do it, it's not going to be easy. I'll have a video to help explain that. But also, the point that you just made there, it's not one political institution or administration that is the root cause of this, right? It's more than one. It's basically the history of our country, how it's been run for the last 30 years. The implications of that is both political parties have been involved, have made similar decisions.
Because it was easy to throw money at it.
Not just that.
It was easy to
Not just that, because they don't differ ideologically speaking. It's not just that it's the easy thing to do, it's that both of them, or rather neither of them, have any sort of ideological identity that would steer them away from this easy path. So they both take the same path of least resistance. The implications of that, I will have that discussion with you later on. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have another video, a longer one this time, to kind of further explain Dutch disease, but also to help further explain why diversification is so hard. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point. Shaw Michael Small, Mr. Keaton Shaw. We'll be right back.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide, but do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport, October 3rd to October 23rd, with replays on October 24th. It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
My mom has been shopping here for the last 15 years. So coming here with her, now I have my own family.
The variety of items, cleanliness of the place, the spaciousness.
My favorite section is household.
My husband loves the hardware section and the auto section. My favorite would be stationery.
Price Club is the low price leading supermarket in TNT.
They are the best. I would recommend Price Club to anybody.
Diwali time again. Come to Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan for all your Diwali essentials. Get your clay diyas, cotton wicks, floating wicks, beautifully decorated imported diyas. And now in stock, our long-lasting, easy lighting wax diyas. Fasting? We have frozen vegetarian meals, exciting Indian spices and grocery items, decorated mithai boxes, prasad bags, freshly ground elaichi powder, and a paper sohari leaves. And don't forget our popular, tasty, mouth-watering mithai. We have simple Diwali Puja guides on CD with a Puja handout, and our helpful staff will assist you with all the required ingredients to perform your Diwali Puja. Get great deals on lantern decorations, electric diya string lights, and happy Diwali decorations. Visit us at the corner of Watt Street, Kirep, or at St. Ives Street, Chaguanas, opposite the Charleville taxi stand, or call 663-6084. Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan. It's a family tradition, serving the nation and Dharma. Lakshmi Mata's divine blessings to all. For your convenience, both branches are open on Sundays until Diwali.
Perfection doesn't happen by chance. Like an artist, the cook selects the main ingredient, one that is worthy of a proud cultural tradition. Trusted to enhance your creations with its richness and versatility. To create a cooking masterpiece, the secret is simple. The brand we know, the brand we trust, the brand our ancestors have been using for generations.
There is only one pure cow brand ghee. Look for the marks of authenticity.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, we have another video that I'm hoping that we could play. It's going to be quite a bit longer than the last one. But it goes now further into the explanation as to the cause of Dutch disease, but also the difficulty of trying to diversify an economy that gets caught in this situation. Let's see if we can grab that video now.
Dutch disease is just a catchy title that the publication, The Economist, gave to Rybka-Kaczynski's theorem on the endowment effects of the factors of production on goods outputs. You can see why they needed a catchy title. This theorem looks at the factors of production, land, labour and capital, and assesses how a change in these factors will result in a change in the outputs produced by an economy. Every economy is bound by what is known as the production possibility frontier. This is a limit beyond which an economy can simply not produce any more stuff because it has fully utilised all of the resources available to it in the most efficient way possible. Good economists therefore need to make decisions about what to produce and what not to produce, because making something like a car is going to use up land, labour and capital, which can't then be used to make other products, like let's say computers. This is the foundation of opportunity costs. Everything an economy makes comes at the expense of making something else. Land and labour are pretty self-explanatory, and capital is simply anything that can be used to produce something of value. A factory full of industrial equipment is capital. The computer I'm writing this video on right now is capital. Portfolio of financial assets is capital because it will produce value by paying dividends. Even cash is capital because it can be used to buy stuff that makes things. Now the trick here is that an economy is not normally going to run into production limits based on all of the factors of production at the same time. For something like farming food, an economy will run out of good land before it runs out of capital or manpower. And for something like financial services, an economy will run out of skilled labour and capital before it runs out of land. All of the biggest banks in the world combined could fit their facilities many times over on the average Australian cattle farm. The production of some goods are bound by not enough capital, some are bound by not enough labour, and others are bound by not enough land. Take an economy that is choosing either to produce consumer goods or oil. If they direct their resources to producing more consumer goods, they will have less resources left to produce oil, and vice versa. Opportunity costs. Consumer goods are bound by labour and capital. You need manpower and factories to make these items efficiently. Oil production is mainly bound by land. If you don't have oil in your soil, you can deploy all of the infrastructure and manpower you want, you're not producing oil. Normally these three factors of production would be shown to create a single production possibility frontier. But remember, an economy is not likely to run into these limits at the same time, so we are going to assume that labour and capital are perfectly interchangeable for both of these products, and draw a land limit separately. If we follow the inside line these specific limitations create, we get the production possibility frontier again. Anything under this line is some combination of consumer goods and oil that the economy can produce, and anything above the line is a combination that is beyond the capacity of this economy because it doesn't have enough capital and labour or enough land. The economy finds an optimal middle ground where these two limitations intersect, and they make some cars and they pump some oil from the few fields fully utilising land, labour and capital. But say this economy suddenly discovered another huge reserve of fossil fuels. What that would look like on this chart is the land constraint shifting outwards, because while the country hasn't added more hectares to its landmass, the land that it does have has become more productive because it's full of oil. We can now draw a new production possibility frontier, and you will notice that the intersection point has shifted. If we look at the makeup of consumer products versus oil in the economy, then obviously the amount of oil production has increased because there is more oil to extract. But despite the economy actually growing wealthier overall, the production of consumer goods has fallen. But why did this happen? This might come as a shock to some economists, but just because something works on a market or PPF chart doesn't mean that it works in the real world, and it's still very important to explain how this actually plays out. In this example, the oil industry draws in capital and labour that would have gone to producing consumer goods, because an investor is going to make much more money from a $100 million oil rig than they will from a $100 million toys factory, which is the capital, and workers are going to make much more money working on a rig than they will working on a production line, which is the labour. Rybka-Kaczynski's theorem therefore shows that natural resource wealth impacts the supply of other goods and services in the long term, as well as the market demand for those goods and services in the short term due to currency fluctuations. Overdependence on a single industry, even one that isn't inherently unsustainable, causes lots of economic instability. Single industry economies become dependent on commodity prices, and their prosperity ends up being determined by how much they can sell a barrel of oil for. So diversification is the name of the game, and there are two ways to achieve this: increase capital or increase labour productivity. If we look at oil-rich countries that have gone on to become economic failures, like Venezuela, we often find that governments were tempted to use the oil revenues to immediately increase living standards for the people through generous, indiscriminate welfare plans. That might be very tempting, especially if the country is very poor, but it doesn't solve any of the underlying economic issues that come from natural resource wealth.
So, if we look at what happened with Venezuela, giving out generous social grants doesn't necessarily help the situation. One of the main examples of increase in capital is what happened in the Netherlands, where, Keaton, they had a sovereign welfare fund, similar to our Heritage and Stabilization Fund. But their fund, I think, is in the hundreds of billions, if not, it would reach $1 trillion. I'm not sure where it is. It certainly dwarfs our own. I believe it's the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. The flip side to that is the other thing that you could do is improve your labor. Well, we did try education. We put money into it. Did we necessarily improve the quality of our labor force? And then were we able to utilize what improvements that we actually managed to have? And I would say that the answer is we might have improved it a little bit, but our improvement we did see we didn't really utilize in any meaningful way at all, because the country has not really seen any change or difference from having GATE for almost 20 years.
Throwing money at something does not necessarily mean, and it ties back into the last point before the break, throwing money at something does not necessarily improve it. It is something that we always look at where there is a lack of investment or a lack of funding, which simply does not allow for a situation or an entity to progress. But you can throw money all you want. Whether or not you do the right things with those funds and that money, whether or not you invest it in the areas that are in dire need of financing, or whether or not you streamline actual policies and implement proper procedures, then what's the point? You're just being redundant in your efforts because you are funding a failing entity. And this is the thing. I think we've made the mistake over the years, successive governments, that the issue with Trinidad and Tobago, and let me not say that it is not an issue. It is one issue, but it seems as though it's the only issue in the eyes of governments past and present. Mm-hmm. That if you throw money at something or you invest in it, it's definitely, you're going to see the results, you're going to see improvement. No. Listen, I could pay a worker $100,000. Is he the right worker for the job? Is his performance actually allowing the best out of that position? Am I getting the best results? No, that may not be it. There may be somebody else who's working for far less that's doing a greater job, a better job than that individual, who probably is best suited for that position. And I think half the times we completely mistake and misunderstand what is required. So here in TNT, by the way, you pointed out the thing about political ideology. That governments past and present.
I'll get to that, yeah.
Right? I asked a question on Tuesday before the show ended. I'm here today on the program. I wasn't here yesterday. I'm here today. And I challenge any viewer, any caller to tell me, what is the difference between governments past and present? Whether or not you want to look at the NAR, which arguably had a different thought process to the United National Congress-led government and the PNM-led government. What is the differences in their political ideologies? Can somebody point out to me whether or not there is a difference? Because in my opinion, I think the UNC and the PNM have similar political ideologies, if you could even classify what they are.
So now to get to why diversification is going to be hard. Well, according to the theory, land is what it is, right? And we're using up a lot of the good parts of our land infrastructure with oil and gas when we find these natural resources. So generally speaking, look at labor and capital. Well, we didn't really utilize the amount of money we pumped into education. We didn't take advantage of it. And right now, the Ministry of Education, the largest budgeted allocation, probably cannot meet the debts that it has with regards to maintenance and construction of education facilities. But then now, when we look at capital, the Heritage and Stabilization Fund is not that much of a factor with regards to its growth, with regards to its returns, and a lot of the investment that we supposedly put into the country was really short-term things, short-term social welfare and grants that didn't really, they gave a man a fish today, they gave a man a fish tomorrow. They didn't teach a man how to fish, they didn't give him the infrastructure to help him fish, they didn't give him the industry support so that his efforts would be more efficient or that it would be easier. No, we just gave out fishes. So we didn't necessarily improve our capital position. We don't necessarily have the investment into stocks, bonds, what have you. We don't necessarily have a large portfolio. We have $5 billion US in the HSF. Is that enough to help turn the economy around? No, that might be enough to impact 1 or 2 budgets. So how are we going to diversify if the factors we have for our output for our GDP is generally more or less the same, and right now, arguably speaking, this is where you do have to at least have the discussion and not just assume that the government is wrong. You know, is the government really totally mistaken for saying, well, the biggest bang for a buck is in oil and gas, and we are not necessarily ready for the fight to try to transition away from it? Granted, I will say that we still have to do it. It's a long-term thing. We can't just shy away from it, and that's the mistake the government is making, right? I think you have said it, I have said it, other economists have said it on the show. Still utilize oil and gas now in the short term, but position ourselves, start the processes now so that we could get to the what comes next. We have a clear plan.
Is that we're going along with that. Okay, we're focusing on oil and gas now.
But we're not laying the foundation for anything.
And that's precisely my fear. My fear is, okay, we're simply going to say, listen, we're focusing on oil and gas right now. The government cannot move away from oil and gas right now. The Prime Minister has stated that. The Minister of Energy and Energy Industries has stated that. The Minister of Finance has stated that. Whilst we're looking at other areas, we have not given focus to other areas.
I don't even know, have we even really explored these other areas? And the thing is now, which government did it differently? Really and truly. And it comes to a question that I asked myself last night. Why are people even loyal to the political party that they're loyal to? Because what are the ideals that they are hoping to see from the next crop of politicians of said party? And the reason why I ask that is, when we think about it, what will most people say? Well, my party is the party for better governance, right? To improve the lifestyle of the people, and a whole set of positive things. But what people might not realize is that's not an ideology. That's an outcome. The ideology is to say, how are you saying we're going to reach the outcome? Everybody has the same goals in mind.
But first of
all, they don't have an ideology to get there.
There is a lack of long-term vision and long-term thinking in Trinidad. No, governments have always had this vision of what can I do that is best for our government and will fit well with the people for the next 5 years. There is no long-term planning. There's no because, okay, even if there was Vision 2020 by Patrick Manning,
yeah,
were we able to achieve that?
But Keaton, it doesn't even have to be long-term. Look at I mean, this is an extreme example, but Liz Truss in the UK and the economic plan that they try to go into. While it seems very foolish, at the very least, it's in line with an ideology that her party was voted in for.
What was that ideology?
The idea of reducing taxes goes alongside what conservatives, the conservative economic theory, less government footprint, less government pressure on the economy to allow the economy to flourish. Ease of doing business is another way to express that. But reduced taxes is one of the obvious ways.
You're stating that, and then at the same time, you see by making such rash decisions what
she took it too far.
What it led to. So, but the other point is, and you asked about why are people loyal to political parties to their political party
that don't have any actual ideology.
As I said, I don't know what is the political ideology, and I don't know if anybody could point out what the political ideology of the United National Congress or the People's National Movement is, or even the NTA or the PDP. Arguably, loyalty in Trinidad and Tobago lies purely because of race. That is where loyalty lies here in TNT. Arguably because of race. That is where the majority is. I'm not stating that is for everybody, but for the majority, it is simply because of race. That my loyalty lies to this party simply because of race.
It could even be a minority, but I would still say it's for too many. But I think, ultimately speaking, when we talk about politics in this country, what is the source of all of our problems? The other side. We don't actually break things down in any sort of meaningful or constructive way. And that's we end up in this cycle where the political class gets away with doing what they've always done. And I think people need to understand what's going on in Venezuela. That can happen here. It's very likely we're going along the same exact path with the ideas that come out of Dutch disease. You know, it's more or less, that's how it goes. That's the textbook example there. Both Venezuela and, to a lesser extent, we are on that same textbook course. We have to take a break for news on the hour. When we return, we'll open the phone lines. We'll continue this discussion about political ideology of the parties, not just today. We welcome that for you to call in for that. But I think this is going to be something long-term now, because it's leaving me kerfuffle, folks. When we return, we'll take your calls after this.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Double murder in Wallerfield. Scrap iron dealers seeks government's assistance to secure loans. TTPS confirms that COC services resumes. And internationally, Indonesia bans all syrup medicines after death of 99 children. Now for the details. A double murder has been reported in Wallerfield. Details are sketchy at this time, but WESN understands that CSI, Homicide Region 2, Arima Police and undertakers from Tacarigua have visited the scene. The victims are said to be both males. More details will be provided in a subsequent newscast. The Trinidad and Tobago Scrap Iron Dealers Association has reached out to the government for assistance in securing loans. President of the association, Alan Ferguson, yesterday ventured to the Office of the Attorney General to offer recommendations. As he said, the members have been suffering since the 6-month ban on exports was implemented.
So we asked them, please, stand security for us in a way that put out a funds that are 10 million or something for help the members and people to able to open back up the scrapyard. We also recommended that because this is one of the serious things that we need for our industry.
Ferguson added that should the industry be given the chance to reopen, there will be stricter measures put in place for dealers.
When we pull in containers, that it will have a camera, CC camera, monitoring what we do and what we put in the containers. So it will make it easier for them to work with us in reference to when we pull in containers again.
The processing of applications for the Certificate of Character Service has resumed. The resumption comes on the heels of a disruption in service over the past few weeks, which was caused by a system malfunction. The TTPS is advising the public that there is currently a backlog of COC applications, which is engaging the attention of the Criminal Records Office to be cleared in the soonest possible time frame. New applications, however, are not expected to be impacted and should be processed within a 3-week period. On to international news now. The deaths of nearly 100 children in Indonesia have prompted the country to suspend sales of all syrup and liquid medication. It comes just weeks after a cough syrup in the Gambia was linked to the deaths of nearly 70 children. Indonesia said some syrup medicine was found to contain ingredients linked to acute kidney injuries, which have killed 99 young children this year. It is not clear if the medicine were imported or locally produced. Well, that was your news of the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
welcome back. This is Talking Point Show. Michael Small, Keaton Shaw. We're here to now listen to what you have to say. The conversation for the last hour, well, due to the nature of television, was more or less one-sided until my host came in there. But now we also invite you to join in on the conversation between Keaton and myself. Let's make this an all-encompassing discussion. Of course, there are other stories of the day that we did not necessarily get to. And if you want to bring them up, ask us for a comment, ask us a question or opinion, that's fine. Or if you just want to make a point yourself. But we do have a caller from Pitty Valley, I believe. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean and Keaton.
Morning.
I came in late, so I didn't hear the whole program, but my contribution this morning is simple, very simple. The political ideology in Trinidad and Tobago is simply race. Full stop.
Yeah.
Nobody can challenge me on that. I'll give you an example. When the PNM could win Siparia for me, Princess Tong, then talk to me, or the UNC could win Diego Martin, Mova, St. Anne's, then come and talk to me about politics in Trinidad. It is simply race. That's my contribution this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
And you made I wouldn't argue with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, Keaton made the same point. And what else could we say? Because what is the cause of our problems? We really and truly, what else is the cause besides the other side? If anybody could tell me. So folks, call in. Do you agree with what the caller said? I suspect that quite a few people will. Of course, we would love to hear any dissenting opinions. We have a call on the line from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hey, morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
With respect to this discussion, you know, there are a myriad of, as Keaton said, quite a number of factors. But I would like to focus this morning on our, what we call in this country, we have big government. Big government does not equate efficiency. And that is one of the problems because of our windfalls from the energy sector. We have developed a system where we just use the government as the employer, as the main employer. So we have opened all kinds of statutory authorities, all kinds of stuff we have done, and all that money that we spent on education, we end up having to employ those people rather than focusing on, okay, we have this amount of people, we're going to put all this money into education, and then channel those people into diversification, other industries instead of big government. What we should have been doing is developing industries, similar to what a lot of these small countries in the world that are successful have done. But that takes I don't want to use that word. That takes gumption. That takes people in charge who will not be susceptible to corruption, which is another big factor that has affected us over the period of time. We have examples of that corruption, and it is everybody knows how bad corruption is in this country.
Yes.
That is my contribution, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you very much, caller.
The one thing I'll say to that, though, is during the heights of the oil revenue boom, it's difficult to move away from that, to move the economy away from that. Not saying that it's impossible. No, the Netherlands did it, or I believe either the Netherlands or Norway, they are not just dependent on oil and gas. They also have, I believe, they're a major hub for transportation, shipping services in the northern European seas.
I'd like to respond to your caller from San Fernando, but we do have a caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Keaton and Small.
Good morning.
Yeah, you know, in spite of the race problem that we have, you know, one is about development and the other one is about destruction. And that is the bad thing. If we had the race problem and we had the both of them developing the country, it would have been good. But you're definitely seeing that in spite of everything, one developing the country and the other one come and mash it up. We see that in 2010. And we have to deal with the matter. You understand? These are the things we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Caller, once you made a point about development, I keep asking, development at what cost? I tie that back to the point that has been made before, that is it that people would rather have corruption and high degrees of corruption associated with development, rather than, we try to get rid of corruption and we try to improve the existing infrastructure and services. I always make that point. Is it that people are okay with high levels of corruption as long as there is development? And nobody could answer that question for me. To the point that the caller from San Fernando was making, he made very, very valuable points. And this is why I always have had this thinking that each government has not had a long-term plan or a long-term strategy. It has only been, what can we do within the next 5 years that could benefit us and will sit well with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That's been it. I don't think governments think beyond 5 years until a general election comes.
I think we need to stop thinking development is, well, we have a bypass. Yeah, that's some development, but real development, what we're lacking is what you've been saying. Where is the other industry? Where is the other source of, because it's not just about revenue, it's about employment. And when the government is the main employer, that's not really helpful when we have ministries and public offices that they can't even utilize, as the caller from San Fernando said, it's big governance. That doesn't necessarily mean efficient governance. We're not getting bang for a buck. We're not getting any returns from having an over-bloated WASA, over-bloated Petrogen. And it's costing us money.
An independent Trinidad and Tobago benefited from the energy sector for the best part of 50 years. I think within the last 10 years, you saw it declining, right? But we've benefited from that. Tell me, what do we see? Tell me, what do we see as a result of that?
Yeah, are we better than before?
Excellent, fine. You have a GATE program. That's one way.
But we can't sustain it without the oil revenue.
Right. We were able to have all these wonderful education programs. Fine, fair enough.
We can't sustain it without the oil revenue.
There you go. Show me what Trinidad and Tobago has gained. How has Trinidad and Tobago benefited from oil and gas in the last 50 years?
I think you hit the nail there. You summed it up quite well. That's the development that we're lacking. Just development is not GATE. GATE is just a way to spend the money. The money came from oil. So what is now the development that's going to drive our economy, our employment, our society in the future?
So we have free education in Trinidad and Tobago. And, well, there is a cost education. We have education in which you don't have to go and you don't have to pay school fees unless you decide to go to a private school. But at the same time, I'm going to that school. I'm benefiting from not having to pay term fees and whatnot. But yet, I don't know at what point in time would this school actually fall apart and collapse upon me and my classmates and my teacher. That is what we're living in now. Okay.
The bathrooms break down.
Bathrooms break down. Pigeon infestation. Imagine in this day and age, we had about pigeon infestations. We have sewage problems, right? Look at the Care Presbyterian Primary School, for example. The new school is built. The new school is completed. Right now, grass and tall weeds and vines are occupying the new building because the government has not paid off the contractor, so therefore the contractor hasn't handed over the keys. Whilst the old school is starting to, they're trying to maintain it as best as possible, but it's not in the best of conditions, hence the reason why they built a new school in the first place. This is the thing, these are the areas that you have to address. Oil and gas, great. Our infrastructure is poor. Our road networking is poor. Our drainage is poor. Transportation in Trinidad and Tobago is poor. National security is poor. What's the point of a Ministry of Planning and Development when I don't know exactly what we develop in our planning?
Our labor situation is probably worse than what it appears to be on the surface. We have a caller from Chagonas. Good morning.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Well, I missed you all yesterday.
I know.
When Karen came, but she produced, I heard a repeat, and of course she answered a lot of questions, except my key one, of course. why did they change property tax? They get no answer. Now you mentioned that nothing by government has been not successful, right? That isn't true. We had Plimdeco, right? It's true government tried its best to sabotage it. And Plimdeco run a very efficient harbor there. Government is looking for somebody to run the harbor in Port of Spain. Why don't they just have Plimdeco run it? And the last thing this government did, when you have a company like that is working very efficiently, and mainly because they had a chairman who had belonged to one party, and when the government changed, they realized he was good and they kept him there for at least about 20 or 30 years. Government went and changed nearly everybody on the board of Plimdeco. Why do you change the whole board of a successful company? The same thing with NFM. Was a very successful party. But government trying again the best to demolish it. Because why should we subsidize a foreign stuff that coming in here when we have local substitutes? It makes no sense. So it's not the entities. They're not given a free hand, and the best people will not be put to run them. We talk about diversification. We today is going again diversification the wrong way, and we talk about no government operating good. Under Dr. Eric Williams' first 2 terms, it was done properly, because if you wanted to do something, you didn't go to the minister or the prime minister. You went to the public service agency and put up your position. If that didn't work, then you will go further. And when you went to the public service, whatever they decide to put up high up, you will get a copy. Now they're hiding that and claiming that is confidential. You talk about devaluation. Everybody missing the point of problem with devaluation. The problem with devaluation is we are mismanaging the country and we are not collecting our revenue. If we do that, we find $300 is overvalued. You said the public service bloated. Yes, it bloated when I set up party hacks to do nothing. But every one of those public service agencies needs staff that they don't have.
Yes.
And the government on the other side have a next thing they call an OJT problem, on the job training, which is stupidity. Because a lot of people have very, very good qualifications which can fill the posts that you need, and they could be trained to do that. And finally, just made the point about no one could get the data on this and the data on that. Why? I have explained to you before when Dr. Williams set up the National Computer Agency to see everything was consistent throughout government on computerization. You had a proper database for all government information with some key players like the CSO and the Commissioner, the State Land
Professor, apologies to have to cut you, but we have other callers.
Well, thank you very much for
thank you for your contribution.
That's what Plimdeco, it's 49% privately owned. So that's not wholly government owned. But that's probably why it's working.
I appreciate the point you made about state boards, of which we will speak about shortly. We have a caller on the line with us, I believe from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
You're live, caller. Don't listen to the TV, you're live, caller. Listen to the phone.
Hello, good morning. All right.
I think we see, if the caller was speaking, there were some audio problems.
Caller, to all those calling in on the program, please turn on the volume on your television. When you are calling in, don't listen to the television, listen through your phone. Caller from San Fernando, we lost you there, we apologize, but you can call back in because we still have about 5 minutes left for the call-in segment.
You wanted to respond to the first San Fernando caller?
I responded to him, but to what Shagonas had stated about state boards, he's absolutely right.
Yes.
That is one of the issues that we've seen with government after government. For example, when the PNM government came in, right, to deal with EFCL, they decided to put Arnold Piggott as the chairman, right? Then there was a whole set of corruption scandals surrounding Arnold Piggott. He resigned as chairman of EFCL, and nothing ever happened. But it's not just the PNM government who did that. The People's Partnership government did that back in 2010 as well. I think that's what happened with Vandana Moat. She started off on a state board, right? She started off as a secretary, then went on the state board, then became the mayor of Shabonas, then a member of parliament. Why? Because Auntie Combs favored her. That is the point. Listen, if you are...
The fact that she went from secretary to state board to politician to actual political parliamentary post, that just shows, was she probably the best person for the job for that state board?
In Trinidad, we have a caller. I want to continue this point, but we have a caller with us from Tagrico. Good morning, caller.
Hey, morning.
Morning.
Yeah. Well, I've been hearing you all in little stats. There'll be part 2 and 4 in the house this morning. What I want to say is, anything you need in this world, you have to spend money for it. If you go to the road there and you want a nail, you have to pay for it. So it don't matter how much money the People's Partnership spend. They could show you where they spend it on and taking the corruption out of the issue as you all have been saying. Before this government come and pandemic, we used to have 640,000 to 700,000 people employed. And this happened a long time ago. And if you look back and ask people, Frank Bassotti, one of the best economists in this country, told you that in 1988 or 1999, I think that's when he said that. It was proven twice with all the money we had. Money is not the solution to unemployment. Right? In both booms, they proved that. There are thousands of people unemployed under the same PNM government. We had full employment almost on the camera. So let me stop comparing the two governments. The People's Partnership was the best government we ever had.
All right, thank you.
Let me accept that, man, as big men. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
You still didn't answer my question about the difference between the PNM and the UNC in terms of political ideology. I mean, you're making an argument about the government, sir, but I still don't know what their political ideologies are and what is the cost of development. And understand where I'm coming at. But I hear you, caller. We have another caller online with us. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Hello?
Hi, good
You're
morning.
live, you're on air. You're
Hello?
on air, caller. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, good day, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say that in order to solve this problem, we have to have accountability. Accountability meaning that every year you give an account, or every so often you give an account of what you are spending. And if there are no accountability, you cannot finish corruption would not finish. And we need to have, in both sides, we need to have people facing accountability by jail, by going to the courts. The courts are there to facilitate these things. And again, I say accountability, and they don't care. Because look, one of my major issues, they don't have any drugs for the old people, including myself.
They don't have what? Sorry, caller.
Buy it, and we are not working anyway to buy it. And we pay health charge for so long. And now we can't get the drug, but you can get it for sale. Thank you, I will listen out there.
Thank you.
One thing, caller, that I would say, it's not just to be informed how the money is spent, but also the voters then have to hold to account when money is spent poorly. So we have to respond. We have to then do our function in the equation. They could give us the information, but we'd have to act upon it.
Final call for the morning. Final call from San Fernando. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning, caller.
You're live, caller. Go ahead.
Hello, yes.
Hi.
I'm calling on, I want to make a point that about the new wastewater plan that was opened in San Fernando. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know if I'm wrong. But Trinidad has so many rivers, water stream, and then we open this wastewater plant, which I'm not comfortable in using water anymore, because this wastewater plant, you know what is wastewater? It's from sewer line, it's from everybody, wastewater, funeral home, hospital. I want to know if that water is really right for residents to use. As the minister said, San Fernando now will have a full supply of water as this plant opens. With all this, as I said before, all this rivers and water we have in Trinidad, we even have a rain season now, more than dry season. I don't see the point that they should go there. And then I'm very, very unhappy in using this water. That is my point.
Yeah.
If you could tell me it's good, I don't know.
Well,
but I am very unhappy in using this wastewater. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. The long and short is, though, that the treatment has to be done because the wastewater has to go somewhere. We can't like keep it in a tank in perpetuity. The amount will just keep growing. So the irony is, at some point it will go back into our rivers and watercourses and into the sea. So by treating it, at the very least, the water will be cleaner. And in theory, yes, treatment plants can clean water for consumption.
But Caller, essentially what this wastewater is going to do is going to collect, I think, up to 45 million gallons of wastewater a day, and treat it, because what was being done before was being dumped into the Superior River, right? So it's going to be collecting this wastewater, treating it, and then it could be released back. And don't worry, any water that comes from the rivers or the seas, I mean, seawater is a whole different story. Any water that comes from the river, watercourses, or dams always has to be treated before it is sent through water lines into your home. So I don't know if we've actually eased your discomfort, but that's the best as we can explain it right now. We'd have to take a quick break here on the program, and when we return, we'll wrap things up for this morning's edition of Talking Points. We'll be right back.
Diwali time again. Come to Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan for all your Diwali essentials. Get your clay diyas, cotton wicks, floating wicks, beautifully decorated imported diyas, and now in stock, our long-lasting, easy lighting wax diyas. Fasting? We have frozen vegetarian meals, exciting Indian spices and grocery items, decorated mithai boxes, prasad bags, freshly ground elaichi powder, and paper sohari leaves. And don't forget our popular tasty mouth-watering mithai. We have simple Diwali Puja guides on CD with a Puja handout, and our helpful staff will assist you with all the required ingredients to perform your Diwali Puja. Get great deals on lantern decorations, electric diya string lights, and happy Diwali decorations. Visit us at the corner of Watt Street, Kirep, or at St. Ives Street, Chaguanas, opposite the Charleville taxi stand, or call 663-6084. Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan. It's a family tradition, serving the nation and Dharma. Lakshmi Mata's divine blessings to all. For your convenience, both branches are open on Sundays until Diwali.
Well, folks, that's more or less all the time that we have for the show today. I'd like to thank all the callers that called in to give their opinions. We understand and we hear your opinions, but I do believe that, you know, the situation is not so simple. I understand that you may have your point of views, but at the end of the day, I think we will both hold firm to our stance that we're kind of disappointed in what we see from both parties, and the latest NACTA poll more or less reveals similar situation across the country.
And quite frankly, again, this starts off with that call from Pitty Val, who said, essentially loyalty and political ideology in Trinidad and Tobago is solely based off race.
Yep.
And the caller from San Fernando, who basically summarized our problem here in Trinidad and Tobago, is so many factors. And it could be changed, it could be worked on, but whether or not we have the will to do so. But that's it for the program. And I want to thank everybody. From Michael Smalls, good to be back.
Yep, good to see you. Good to have you on the show.
And folks, well, if all goes well, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Yep.